Namaskar and welcome to our second session of the evening. Kotiji, could you just please play the video message from the High Commissioner of Indian High Commissioner in Australia?
Namaste to all participants of Namaste 2020, and which is dedicated to the global Utsava of Indian soft power. It's indeed a privilege and indeed timely that I should be involved in something like this. It gives me indeed great pleasure. The Indian civilization indeed has contributed hugely to the development of the global civilization, and India's contribution of soft power through centuries is now well recognized. For instance, we know the number zero in arithmetic mathematics, which came from India, had such a profound effect on the way that we could develop very quantitative sciences, music, arts as well in different parts of the world. In Southeast Asia, it was during the centuries that these Indian traditions of music and arts traveled to such locations. And if you look in the more modern era, in more recent times, India has made huge advances, very big advances. Our economy has become very comprehensive, but it's a soft power which also is very important to note. We are able to provide a complete package, whether it is yoga, whether it is Bollywood, whether it is Hindi language, whether it is writings by Indian authors, content in terms of the TV channels. So India is able to provide soft power and complement its other elements which are well known, our economic advances, and there is not a single city in the world, important cities, where Indian restaurants are not there. That is another aspect, that Indian cuisine has a distinctive style and tradition, and you have Indian cuisine the world over by itself. So that is a very, very big element. And sports also is another area. Actually, if you look at it, chess is another demonstration of the way that India has contributed to evolution of soft forms of diplomacy. Chess, the way it was invented was the kings developed this game so that they need not go to war, actual war, but could decide on the table who the winner was. And today it's a worldwide kind of game which enjoys worldwide popularity. So overall, if you look, India has made very big advances as we approach the 75th anniversary of our independence, and this achievements, whether in agriculture, industry, and in other areas, science, technology, R&D, space, is complemented by our achievements in soft power, and that makes India a complete package. I would, with that, wish each one of you very fruitful deliberations at this forthcoming event. My best wishes to all participants. Thank you.
Namaskar and welcome to this session on tech and culture. We just had a message from the High Commissioner of India to Australia, Shri Gita Sharma. He joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1986. He worked in the Ministry of External Affairs as Under Secretary. Mr. Sharma's overseas assignments include Indian missions in Russia, Ukraine, Hong Kong, Pakistan, and the United Kingdom. He has been Ambassador of India to Uzbekistan and High Commissioner of India in Fiji. Additionally, he served as the Officer on Special Duty IT-Enabled Services in the Information Technology Department of the State of Andhra Pradesh, Hyderabad, India. He was also Joint Secretary, External Relations in the Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India. A great thanks to the Ambassador for sending the message since he could not make it to the session live. It was very kind of him. Now I'd like to invite everybody, all the panelists to this session. I will introduce the chair, Sri Mohandas Pai, and then I will allow him to take over. The Center for Soft Power is the organization that has put together this whole Namaste 2020. We have been supported by the ICCR and also the SVyasa University. This is a global Utsava of Indian soft power. We are looking at several aspects of our country's soft power and how we can take it to the world. Many aspects of our, I should say practically everything about India is something that is universal and can be enjoyed by everybody anywhere in this world. As long as, I would say we would be very happy that they remember we nurtured it here. So we thought that we should do this section on tech and culture because today it's a changing world and culture has to deal with technology too. So I welcome, Swagatam to our panelists now, Sri Mohandas Pai. I'm sure he doesn't really need such an introduction. He should be known by everybody, but anyway, it's my duty to, give you a couple details about him. In a career spanning over 35 years, Mohandas Pai has served in the areas of finance, accounting, information technology, human resources, education, corporate governance, social impact innovation, environmental conservation, policy formulation, heritage preservation, philanthropy, and the venture capital and startup ecosystem. He is currently the chairman of Arin Capital, chairman of 314 Capital, chairman of Manipal Global Education. He was awarded the Padma Shri by the President of India in 2015 and the Karnataka Rajyotsava Award in 2004. Shri Mohan was previously a board member and the Chief Financial Officer, CFO of Infosys. Welcome to you, sir, and welcome to the rest of the panelists. I will now hand it over to Sri Mohandas Pai, who was very kind to accept our invitation very spontaneously. Thank you, sir, and welcome.
Mohan,
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hari. Hari, good to see you. You're becoming a Raj Rishi the way we see you now.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, Sanjay, you too got a beard, man. That's
Yes,
great.
yes. This is the new
And
COVID
you're
look.
wisdom. And you're getting wisdom.
This is the COVID look.
COVID look. Fantastic. Long hair. Good. Folks, I'll just speak for a few minutes, then we'll have the great speakers. It's very important to understand the impact of technology on culture and how to fuse culture with technology. And the reasons are very clear. Technology is today taking over culture in a very significant way. Whether it's music, whether it's the arts, whether it's graphics, or whether it's sound, or whether it's dance, or whether there's anything else, technology at the back end and front end has created new forms of beauty and new forms of culture. Even our conversation with each other, our debates with each other is now taking place through social media. And long tracks and long way of discussion is becoming something of a past. And we're seeing the rise of a new generation of young people who are born with technology, digital technology, and who don't know how else to relate. So today we have a particular circumstance where there are people who've grown up in a traditional manner, which is very good. They understand culture, they understand life, they got wisdom because they know the interaction of life and culture. And then we got this new generation, maybe 25, 30, 40 years ahead, who are very, very different. And the pace of change has accelerated over the last maybe 10 years. And the pace of change is going to accelerate even more over the next 10, 15 years. And technology is going to be the heart of the cultural experience that all of us are going to go through. The key issues which are going to impact people is whether technology will substitute human emotion. Technology will overtake the way we do things. And I think these are some things that we need to debate as we go along and understand the impact of technology on culture. But I think the beginning of understanding is to know the impact, what impact technology has had on culture and what should culture do. And should we redefine culture in the new context or should we go with the old definition of culture? And how do young people born to technology relate to culture? And then multiple generations live together and they share the same culture. I think think about something with the considered to be the same between all of them. Of course, there's going to be a great difficulty, and that is the source of this debate. But the beauty of what technology has done to culture can be seen in the way movies are made today. For example, the Marvel movies are all about technology. They're all done in the background. Now, technology can simulate the human form. Technology can make human beings have particular avatars and do something else. We have seen in IIT Mumbai a convocation where there were no human beings, there were avatars on the stage taking the degree certificates. And we are seeing music generated by machines and AI algorithms, possibly more beautiful without the improvisation that happens with great musicians. And we've seen great orchestras and great orchestras and group of people doing music together of a kind which we have not seen before. And we're also seeing dance images on screen which we never thought could happen before. And we are seeing the intersection of human beings and digital avatars together on stage. And when it comes to literature, we are also seeing the rise of an AI algorithm which can create literature using AI. And I think there's been a new release right now which can simulate and create articles which fool people. And recently, a young person used that AI algorithm to create, some kind of articles which became very viral all over. So today, the line between technology and human beings, the line between culture and technology is getting blurred. So I just want to stop here. We'll debate this as we go along. So I would like to invite Resul Pukuti. Resul, please do join us back, who is going to talk to us about India's advances in sound design and how technology and sound are coming together. Resul, they told us that you'll have to go early, so you're going to get the first shot. But Resul, I would prefer you introduce yourself, but at least speak for a minute to tell us what you do, all right? We all know you, we have seen you, we are from afar, we have admired you, but how do you like to speak about yourself? That'll be much better. Please take at least a minute to introduce yourself so that we all know, all the viewers know about this in your own way. Thank you.
Hi, all of you. I hope you all can hear me. I'm in the middle of a mix. I'm doing a very innovative web series for Disney for the moment. What is it like India after 50 years? When AI takes over, and everything is run by AI, and what happens to us who are actually Indians who doesn't believe in machines, So that's kind of a very futuristic kind of a work. So I've been working on that. I've just been back thinking as to how we are generally as a tradition, as a civilization. So that is one aspect. Talk about me. I'm a sound designer. I work in films. Sound is my passion. When I say sound designer, it's very different from music, because music composers make compositions. They use musical instruments to make compositions, and I make sounds. I use microphones to capture sound, and I make pieces of sound to make compositions. So there is a very larger application of sound in the field of art now, which is called sound art. We create artwork out of sound. So I deal with images every day. Images means something that can influence you, that can create meaning in you. And I do that with sound. In the ancient time of India, we believe the sound was used the way we are using electricity now. That sound is a form of energy, and so is electricity. When our ancient rishis had the knowledge and the awareness to an extent that it was used, the power of sound has been used, in many facets of life. Just to tell you an example, the rishis who have formulated the knowledge base today called the Vedas. We believe as a tradition, we believe that they could see sound, you know. So they are called the Mandra Drashtakal, you know, like one who could see sound, you know, like a sound that could be seen means a sound that is reached its supreme, you know, a blissful level of its being. Like, for example, Kalyana Nadams, which we know as today, are being seen by the rishis of our time. So I work in films now, you know, in our. So if you listen to my speech at the Oscars, it said I come from a country and a civilization that has given the universe a sound that is preceded by silence and followed by more silence, and that sound is Om. And we are the only civilization who believed in a sound as a form of energy and sound as a form of emancipation, self-emancipation. If you look at the ancient form of Indian classical music, where, you know, India is the only tradition in the ancient times who believed a human body as the first musical instrument. Now, if anybody who practices Indian classical music, for example, the tradition of Drupad, for example, you know, you can catch hold of a singer's throat and he can still sing, because we believe the ability to sing doesn't come from our vocal cords. We believe the saptaswaras, the 7 notes, come from our nabhi to uchi, from the navel to the uchi. So a classical musician, under the serious tradition of Indian classical music, he is believed to have raised 7 points in his body that can vibrate and produce saptaswaras as per his, you know, as per his ability. And when someone is able to do that, ability to raise saptaswaras from nabhi to uchi at 7 points, he believed to have like raised his kundalini and seen Brahma. You know, that is why in our tradition we believe people who practices music or people who practices art as a work of life, we always see them next to God. We always touch their feet, and we always subjugate to them. We always believe that they have seen someone who has seen Brahma. And in my experience of dealing with sound, I have met with people, I've interacted with people, I have worked with people who have reached at that state of being. So for us, technique is not something that has come now. The technology for me is just a tool, you know. For example, I use technology every day for my work, you know, and for me it is a tool to write my sound, write my compositions. But what makes me write is the knowledge that acquired over a period of certain time in my life and the experience that was offered me. For example, when I see a film like Avatar, I am amazed by what has been created. I don't overburdened with the technology it is allowed to create. For example, if I say Sanskrit is a frozen language, the expressions of Sanskrit, like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and many of those Vedas and Puranas and Upanishads are still active, you know, still doing its work within the psyche of the people. You know? So for me, technology is something like that. For me, technology is a language, you know, that allows me to express myself. What is it that allows me to express myself? I work in films. I create compositions with sound. When I say sound, apart from every other artist who works in cinema or works in every other field of work, they all have tangible things to work with. When I say tangible things, if you ask a painter, he has a brush and a paint, he can touch, feel a canvas, and he can paint. and his work of creation, you can touch and feel. That goes for a sculptor, that goes for every work of art that you do in filmmaking and in every other stream of art. Whereas I work in with sounds that you can touch and feel. So I am working with images that are intangible. When you see a picture, which is a two-dimensional expression of a certain space, for example, you see a landscape. That landscape, I can put in sound onto the landscape, and I can define the meaning of the landscape. I can put the sound of the rain and make you feel that it is monsoon. Or I can put the sound of thunder, and then I can make you feel that the rains are going to come. But I can put wind in that landscape. I can make you feel that it's a desert. So any kinds of sound that I put in a picture is going to define what is that picture is telling you. So what I am saying is I am dealing with, so if a picture that you see in a two-dimensional stretch of a screen is a space, and I am dealing with sound that is going to define that space. And that definition is the temporal element. When I say temporal element, it is going to define the time. When I say time, it could be time of the day, it could be a season, it could be anything that defines time. So every time I put sound to a picture, I am actually concretizing the meaning of a picture which is two-dimensional, or I could say that a picture which is abstract in its meaning. That is the kind of work that I do in films. So technology today has advanced in a stage where it is constantly telling me that I don't need the faculty of memory anymore. For example, 15 years ago, we knew 25 phone numbers by heart, of our parents, of our dear ones, of our friends and family. And today, you don't even know 5 numbers. Even if you know someone's number, of your closest one, you need to look into the phone book. So this is just an example. And everywhere, the technology is telling you that you don't need the faculty of memory anymore. For example, let's take the medical field, wherein as per the Ayurveda tradition of Ayurveda, which is described in our ancient text, a Vaidyan used to see a patient and see what are the cosmic changes that happens when a patient walks into his room. He would consider all that in defining what is the diagnosis of his problem, and prescribe a medicine. For example, if you remember in our time, if you remember going to a doctor, he would ask you to open your mouth and look at it and feel your pulse, this, that, and all that, and give you one medicine. But in today's time, if you have to look at things, if you go to a doctor, he has to take an X-ray or maybe an MRI, minimum an MRI. He has to do a series of tests to find out what he actually want to do. Which means, to me, these are my own doubts to ask to the panel, throw it to the panel for debate. Is technology giving us more options, or are they confusing us? Or are they telling us that, look, you don't need to use the memory anymore? To me, this is what the technology is telling me. But at the same time, I am working in a field of sound, wherein my tradition said, the ancient form of Indian tradition said, sound is knowledge, sound is memory. If you look at the Vedas, it has been passed on from one generation to the other generation as oral text. Sounds of mantras, the mantras are organized in a particular way that is easy to remember as a part of the text was supposed to be sound, that were passed on to one generation to the other generation. If you look at our 10,000 years of our tradition, it has been passed on to one generation as accumulation of sounds, codified in a particular way and then passed on. So my tradition says sound is memory and memory is knowledge. Today, technology, which is far more developed, tells me that I don't need the faculty of memory anymore. You know, for me, a person like me who works with technology every day, what do I make out? Where am I? You know, my tradition says one thing, and my day-to-day work says the completely opposite. So what do? I take the best part of both. You know, to me, technology is a language, like the way Sanskrit was once used, but it's a frozen language, right? At the moment, I look at technology like that. You know, but I take the best elements of my tradition from it, and I come and I imbibe it, and I put it together. For example, if you look at a composition of Rahman, for example, Dil Se or age. Imagine is working on a film, a Hindi film, which is based in North, which is based in Rajasthan. It's on the desert. He is using a drum, hand drum, which is from Turkey. You know what he is doing? He is picking up sounds from different traditions and putting it together. And when we hear the track, we feel that we have heard it somewhere. You know, just that it is poking my memory. It has been there always. I haven't heard it till now, but when I just hear it, I know it has been there. You know, our job on a day-to-day basis in films and in our work of art, in our compositions, is to poke the memory of the audiences on a day-to-day basis. Bring them into a level of consciousness that's never been there before. You know, that's what we do. That's what we do in work. You know, that's what I do with technology every day. You know,
Oh, Risul,
that's
I mean, it is so fascinating to hear you tell this. But tell us, you are at the cutting edge of technology, and being at the cutting edge of technology, do you think technology can simulate what classical singers and classical people who are trained in a culture after many years were able to improvise and do? Can technology simulate?
I do not think so. You know, if you know AI, if you understand AI is a computation of X number of things that we know. That X number means millions and millions and millions, so maybe a billion combinations of things that we know. You know, you have to understand how Indian classical music is conceived in the first place. Indian classical music, a raga performed by a singer in one stage, say at 6 o'clock in the evening, and the same raga he performs at 9 o'clock in the evening are two different things. Same performance by the same artist, same raga. You know why it is different? Because Indian classical music says, this is in the final essence of the music. It says that, you know, what is the job of a musician, of a singer? When he oscillates between 7 ragas, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa. When he oscillates from sa to re, you know, what he is trying to do is find the microtonal ornamentation of sa is where it is meeting the microtonal ornamentation of re. In that sense, where are you finding yourself in the expression of your art? You know, so in the work of art of India, especially the musical tradition, if you take it, and every work of art for that matter, originated in India, it is about an artist finding oneself within the expression of the art that he is practicing. I do not think that AI can bring that in. You know, the human element in any AI that comes out, the human element will be missing. It is accurate 99.9%. At 0.01% of that accuracy is the human element. That is what makes a performance that an artist does at 6 o'clock in the evening of the same raga to a certain audience At 9 o'clock in the afternoon, the same raga to another set of audience makes it different. If you look at the performance of Bhimsen Joshi, for example, the same raga that he performed in X stage and the same raga that he performed in Y stage are diametrically opposite performances. See, the raga structure is the same, but the performances are different. Why does that make it different? Because the Indian tradition says that any art that you practice is about finding yourself in. Where do you find yourself in? Within the structures. It is all about self-emancipation. I do not think that there is concept of self-emancipation exists in AI, and the technology can never replace the human element, whatever comes may. It can do computation of millions of, 1/1 millionth of a second. I deal with sound at 1 millionth of a second. I can draw sound. I can draw sound. I can see a car passing over, and I can take out only the car sound. I can draw it and remove the car sound. 1 millionth of a second is like those dots. That's what technology allows me to do. So while I technology allows me to do the point of the work. Now, from the X number of computation that is available to a doctor in terms of making a diagnosis, the human element has to come in to make him pinpoint from the X number of combinations that the AI is offering. This is the combination that I have to pick up because he has seen the patient, or he has seen the man, he has seen his environment, he has seen where he is coming from, and make a judgment. That judgment is a diagnosis. AI can only give you information. That's what I said. Bill Gates called, when the internet superhighway came up, he said information superhighway. It's all about information. The moment you type something in a Google, it gives you millions of information. But the Indian tradition told, the only tradition in the world, the only civilization in the world that has said information is not knowledge. This is the biggest challenge that we face in today's education sector. We have to tell our teachers, we need our teachers to tell us the difference between information and knowledge. At the same time, we have to look at our children and see that, on a click of a button, they have a million information in their hands, in front of them. But see, in my time, if I need to write an essay on a subject, I would go to sit in the library, refer 10 books, and write down my essay. And today, one can just put in a Google search and get information. But that information is not knowledge. If tomorrow 10 satellites comes down, everything collapses. Versus when we go into a vacuum, what is that going to save us? It is the knowledge that we have. It is the awareness that we have. That is what my tradition said. My tradition said it is memory, is knowledge. It's sound that is knowledge. That's not information. We had information. We had influx of information. If you look at if you study what went behind Nalanda as a university, we had influx of information, but we never relied on it. We sat down under a tree. A person who couldn't even said that tree and this tree, Amaram Imaram, and he said Amaram Imaram, Amaram Imaram, Amaram Imaram, and he became Valmiki. We have tons of experiences, tons of tradition that tells us that through individual emancipation that you become enlightened. When you become enlightened, you become superhuman, and you passed on your information. Look at anybody. Vakpadan, for example. Veda Vyasa, for example. Anybody they were all normal people. They were all normal human beings, but they got enlightened. Because rigorousness is the strength of Indian tradition. Rigorousness. I stress this word again and again. Rigorousness. You as an individual, how rigorous you are able to practice your tradition is what eventually makes you.
So
that 0.001% which the technology cannot offer is going to come from that rigorous practice that you have. And I don't think technology is going to replace ever human beings. Ever.
So you are saying the Indic tradition is of infinite possibilities, and the possibilities can be reduced
Absolutely.
by AI, but cannot be replaced by technology. Is that what you're saying?
No, I said, no, I am saying the search can be reduced by AI because what is search? Search is a computation.
Yeah.
The search can be reduced. The load of the search can be reduced by technology. Eventually, you have to do the search and find yourself in it. When you find yourself in it, the individual emancipation comes in, and there's a well-construct of knowledge comes into you. Technology cannot explode what is within you. I mean, remember, you and me, and probably everyone in this panel, is only using 5% of our human brain, 5% of the capacity or the capability of the neurons that are embedded in our human being. If you do not believe in the theory of evolution, if you do not believe, just look at the fact that we always thought our children are far more smarter than our parents. We were smarter than our parents. Our children are smarter than us. So where is evolution happening? Evolution is happening inside. The computations of neurons is where the evolution is happening. In every generation, 0.00001% of computation is happening. More neuronic computation is happening within our brain. That's what making our kids smarter than us. So evolution is happening. It's not reducing our palm and fist and becoming something else, but as per the Darwin of theory. But we understood as a tradition thousands and thousands of years ago. We said we can explore. What is the sense of being transcend, which is described in our simple meditation technique of yoga, for example. In our text, it's like you can sit here and you can travel the universe. So it is using the power of our inner self. When Buddha said Aham Brahmasmi, what does it mean? We have to look within. We as a human body is the best machine ever made in this universe. The bestest machine ever made in the universe. But only thing is, if you have a car, you service the car every year. You look into your parts and you change brake parts. You do everything. Have you ever looked at what is the inner being of you? This is what Indian tradition is telling you. Every day it is telling you, look within. The inner self-engineering is what is going to make what is the outer you. Technology can only assist you in this.
It cannot replace.
Yeah.
Now, two questions, then I will let you go. If you want, you can remain. One is,
the
Western musical tradition is very systematic, repeatable, and you can write the notes and you have to follow that. Can that be replaced by technology so that we don't need human beings? And second point is, how will new technologies help our classical music, our classical musicians? How will it help them? How will it interact with them in future? Two separate questions.
Let me answer the first question.
Okay.
The first question is see, the Western music is very mathematical in its structure.
Yeah.
If you look at, if you take any symphony or any composition or the Western composition, it is very mathematical in its structure and its exposition. Can AI do this? Yes, of course it can do this. Because it's a mathematical structure. Those are just practices. But what is that we have to look into deeply? Can AI replace what is the origin of Western classical music in its original form? Can it replace? I don't think so, because I have a theory behind this. The ancient form of classical music, as we know today, as originated from the temple tradition. The farthest we can go is Tansen. Tansen is known as the father of Indian classical music. If you go beyond Tansen, there is something in Western tradition called the Gothic music. Gothic structure existed. I mean, of course, the church came in and reformulated it. But if you look at the Gothic tradition of Western classical music, it is quite similar to the ancient form of Indian classical music.
Okay.
There is a look for, there is a search for what is humaneness within a particular structure. I mean, from the Gothic music, the Indian classical music, Western classical music that we know today has moved and came in far more. There's a long distance between the Gothic music and the Western classical music that we know today. And if you take the Western classical music in its mathematical structure, maybe an AI will be able to replace it. But Gothic music, I don't think so. Similarly, Indian classical music, I had already explained that Indian classical music expression of an artist in the tradition of Indian classical music is all about finding what meets between the two notes. It depends on you. That's what makes the difference between Mallikarjuna Mansur and Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, two different entities. So it is their search, to find oneself within a structure. Indian classical music only gave them a structure, which is a very loosely composited structure. Within that structure, you go and find yourself. I do not think that AI will ever be able to do that.
Wonderful, wonderful. You can remain with us, Rasul. I think it's been unbelievable, mind-blowing. It set us thinking, but remain with us however long you want. We know that you have to go.
Okay.
So I think, there'll be questions by the other panelists to you as you go along. Next, we'll have Indian epics and superheroes in the digital form. Sharad Devarajan is an extraordinary individual, and Sharad has created a new form of superheroes based on the Indian epics. Because we do know that our young children, and maybe we too, like comics. And our interaction with many things were based on comics. And for many of our children, our interaction with our tradition was based upon Amma Chitra Katha. Because that became tradition. Because the old form where parents passed on to children was not working because parents are not passing on. So we have this Amma Chitra Katha. Now what Devan has done is something fantastic. He has brought in the digital form, Indian epics and superheroes to create a sense of pride that we don't need a Batman, we don't need a Superman, we don't need whatever is people are looking at. We have our own heroes. Devan, just talk to us and tell us what you do and how technology reshape.
It's so nice to see you and see everyone here on this panel. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Rasul bhai, you have to mute yourself.
Yeah, he's muted.
Okay. Welcome, Sharad.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to see you. Thank you. I love the beard. Looks fantastic. It makes me also want to grow one now. So I think debate in COVID time. But I would also say, one other thing as you're talking about artificial intelligence, one other side of my life is that I'm an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School and Columbia University, where I teach a number of courses on media and entrepreneurship, but I also teach a course on artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and disruptive technology. So it is an area particularly on the impact and the growth we are going to see for the transformation of those technologies in media, but also in society, is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Happy to dive in on those things as well with you, right? So, but let me start. I thought what would be nice is I can show a few images if it's okay.
Okay, sure.
And just my own journey on this work. I'll try and keep it brief, right? But I think sometimes the best thing is to show it when you're doing some of this stuff. So hopefully this can be seen by everyone. Is this seen okay?
Yeah.
Are you able to see these slides? Okay,
yeah.
Great. So look, I've been passionate about superheroes my whole life, right? So, for me, great superheroes are more than just masks, tights. What was that? Hello? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Good, go ahead.
Yeah, but they're the modern mythologies of our world, transcending all cultures and speaking to us in the primal story of human imagination. And for years, when I was a young man, I worked with Marvel and DC Comics to take a lot of their great superheroes, the Western properties, out to the Asian markets. But I woke up one day and I saw that while I was bringing some of the best of the West to the East was going to the West. Characters like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball Z, characters from Korea, China, Japan were becoming household names around the world. And yet which we were seeing everywhere in the world, multi-billion-dollar character entertainment ecosystems really flourishing in creativity and bringing that content to markets around the world. Yet the country which had the largest youth population in the world, 650 million people under the age of 25, had yet to embark on this same global journey. We had the smallest piece of that global character entertainment industry, and there was a huge opportunity to spark this creative renaissance. The other thing I note is that whenever you look at every market and how they created that ecosystem, oftentimes the superheroes of that age were reflections of their society. So that's a big thing for us to understand as we talk about telling these stories. In the West, for example, all the great Western superheroes from Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Hulk, majority of them were dealing with the theme of man and science. And the theme of humanity's imbalance as it felt with all these scientific breakthroughs. So radiation, cosmic rays, the fear of the other, technological experiments gone wrong. If you looked at Japan, a huge ecosystem of character entertainment that was also born of this humanity versus nature theme, where they were dealing with an imbalance as a result of the industrial age. So you had this themes like post-apocalyptic wastelands in Akira, angry forest spirits in Princess Mononoke, or toxic monsters from the deep in Godzilla, reflecting the fears of their era or the imbalances that they felt. And I started to ask myself, what is the story of our generation now? What is the story of the world? And for me, as a character entertainment explorer, it became clear. The story of our world, wherever you are, whether you're living in Boston, Beijing, Bangalore, it doesn't matter, is the story of globalization. Never since Alexander the Great opened up the spice trade have we seen so much of an interexchange of East and West moving around the world at blazing digital speed right now. So all of this interconnection, this interexchange of ideas is the new dialogue that we need to have through our stories. And that led me to the formation of Graphic India, which is, as you point out, I grew up on so many of these myths. They were part of my story, my life as a child. They were bigger to me than anything that I had seen in a Superman or Batman or Spider-Man were the stories of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. But, living in the West and growing up here in the West, I saw that this obsession with the Greek myths, which were executed so perfectly well and in big budgets, we needed to execute these myths and bring them to a global scale in that way. So this is, some images from our version of the Mahabharata that we launched as a series called 18 Days, really describing the 18-day war. And we've launched this worldwide right now, and received critical acclaim for it, developing it now as a big live action television series as well, and trying to really bring this epic into that type of scale and grandeur to the world in a way that is a story that, I think sits at the heart of primal creation of the universe, actually. So, and this is all great artwork done by an amazingly talented Indian individual named Mukesh Singh. Mukesh is, again, an Indian artist that stands toe-to-toe with some of the greatest artists in the world today. And that has been the mission of Graphic India, to search all around the country and find artists, writers, creators, painters, illustrators, poets, pull them together to a studio with one defining mission: to transform the perception of India from being an outsourcer to being the source when it comes to this world of animation, comics, character entertainment, to create a new creative renaissance in this era. So a lot of this artwork and a lot of the kind of amazing visual spectacle that we're trying to bring into this is how, in my head, I'd always imagined these stories being told. To give you a sense. Then I had the great honor of also sitting at this forefront of how do we bring together East and West. I worked with my great mentor for 20 years, Stan Lee. So Stan Lee was the creator of the Marvel Universe. Most of the big characters that we have grown up on in our lives, he really invented that genre and that story. And we've seen that with the Marvel films. And Stan and I worked together to create his first Indian superhero, a character named Chakra the Invincible, which he was kind enough to actually name after my son Raju. And the character is about an Indian boy who creates a technology suit that activates the chakras. So science meets spirituality, East meets West, bringing one of the greatest superhero creators of all time to really create something that is very uniquely Indian. And as Stan himself said, he expected Chakra the Invincible to appeal to people around the world, not just India. And he wants to make Chakra as famous as Spider-Man. That was one of his enduring legacies that he wanted. we were fortunate to launch Chakra as the first digital animated series that appeared on the Angry Birds app on their Tunes TV around the world, reaching close to about 100 million views around the world. And we received images and photos from kids like this one from a kid named Ryan in the Midwest of America, dressed as an Indian superhero for his birthday party. So for all the millions of Indians who dressed as Spider-Man, you know, this was a nice change to see American kids dressing as an Indian superhero for their birthday parties in that sense. And now we're developing it as a big live action feature film as well, based on this amazing legacy that Stan left behind in his Indian character. I also had the great honor of working with Rajamouli on the reinvention of the Bahubali franchise as an animated series. And we're on the 71st episode right now of that series on Amazon Prime, which I created with Rajamouli and Arca Media Works. And the vision of that was to create the first animation for the country that didn't target kids, that really stood as an extension of what the film was. So this follows the young princes, Bahubali and Bilal, as they were growing and becoming the princes in their empire, and is the secret stories, but ties perfectly into the two films. And all of those stories were intended to appeal to an audience that would go much wider. So if you look at what has happened in markets like Japan, they have used animation not as a genre that just targets kids. They've used it as a creative medium that can tell any type of story. And what we're trying to do in India now with this project and a few others that we're going to be launching soon is shift this Miyazaki moment. What Miyazaki has done in Japan is to make animation a cultural event for everybody. And I think that opportunity exists here too. So Bahubali, obviously, I'd encourage everyone who is a fan of the movie to watch that series now, which is on Amazon Prime, but it shows an example of where we see the future of animation also going in the country. Yeah, and as Rajamouli himself said, I've been fascinated by animation, and I'm glad we could visualize these new Bahubali stories through this medium. This is the first animation in India not focused on kids, and I think that's a testament to the amazing world he had really allowed us to build. So some of our new characters, the Shadow Tiger, which we're going to be launching, a new superhero, Avatar X. You know, Shekhar Kapoor and I have worked on an amazing female superhero called Devi, which we're developing right now as a live action production as well. And another female superhero we're working on called Dragonfly in the animation space. But a number of things that we're developing, all from the minds of such amazing creative talents and young creators as well that we brought into India to give them an opportunity to showcase their amazing talents, not only to India, but really to the world in that sense.
Wow, that's fantastic. You know, one question before we go to the next speaker, then we have a Q&A between all of us. But Sharad, tell me, what will this do to the Indian child, to the psyche of the Indian, child, to a culture? We have been brought up in this space, looking at Western heroes. Phantom, Tarzan, I don't know, you may be too young to understand that. We were the Phantom, Tarzan generation. And then you had Superman and all that kind of stuff. Now you're coming with Indian heroes, possibly in 5-7 years when all of this will be a large part of the content. Our children will grow up with the Indian heroes. How will it change the Indian psyche, and how will young kids look at their heritage, their culture? Will they have a deeper interest to explore their own culture, go to a great stories, understand the nuances, etc.?
So I think that the truth is, if you look at the ability right now for us to go and look at the amazing culture India has given us, this 10,000-year rich mythology, heritage, wisdom traditions, all of this now has to be not only, I think, re-inspired to our generation and to every generation, as it has been through artists, poets, creators for thousands of years. They have looked to the sources of these inspirations, of these great mythologies of our culture, from the Ramayana to the Mahabharata, and they've looked to those as a source of inspiration to, you know, create in their mediums of their time ways to inspire and go to those sources. That's no different than what I see now. In fact, you know, much of this art, much of this creativity is using those modern mediums. We just created a virtual reality piece, which was one of the first VR pieces that was from India, that was nominated at the SIGGRAPH Awards in 2018, one of the most prestigious design awards. And it was a piece called The Legend of Hanuman, where someone would be able to stand at the shore and see Hanuman grow from the size of a man to a mountain before their eyes and witness him making the leap. And to do that in a virtual reality experiment where you can put this on and be fully immersed and get the scale and gravitas of that moment I've only imagined in my mind was something I wanted to bring to the world. And hopefully we'll be bringing that out in a much more mass way. That those are the kind of experiences we want to do. So for me, technology is only a driver to empower the richness of these concepts that have been with us for so long. The other part that I think is very important is that, you know, in this debate that we have right now of artificial intelligence, of really the debate of artificial intelligence you're asking is a very interesting one, but it is a debate of still saying that there is this other that is artificial intelligence, and it is coming. As we're witnessing right now is there are two modes of thoughts right now that are happening in the world. The Western thought, which is a matter creates mind. If I can understand what is in that head, if I can replicate what is in that brain, I can figure out how to essentially create an artificial intelligence that can replicate that. Everything we are is all in here. That is the matter creates mind. And that is really the Western philosophical worldview versus the Eastern philosophical worldview, which has always been mind creates matter. That there is something that is beyond this that has always been there. And this in many ways may be the hardware that is driving that software. So the internet is not in this computer. The internet is as far beyond that, but we're using this internet, this computer to access that internet in some way, right? So there's a, you know, mind creates matter worldview that actually exists in the East, and how we take a scientific approach. And in many ways, I think our great scientists are very comfortable shifting their worldviews in a way where they can go and seamlessly do a 10,000-year-old, you know, ritual and have no disconnect with the scientific sides of their minds. Whereas in the West, we may find science versus spirituality. Here we have found an integration in this thought. And I think as we go to this new world of asking the fundamental question of AI is asking us the fundamental question of what is consciousness? The hard problem that we've never been able to solve. And, you know, if anyone is interested, yesterday Elon Musk has, you know, another company that is, he's the only other company that he's a CEO of, you know, there's SpaceX and Tesla, but there's another company called Neuralink. And Neuralink is focused on what he calls brain-machine implants, which essentially the concept of it is that we should be moving now to a speed where we can communicate as fast as artificial intelligence. So the way to do that would be that for me to even talk to you right now, you have to think of a question in your mind, articulate that question, form it with words. I have to hear it, input it, process it, come back with words and send it out.
One minute, Sharad. Rasul, before you go off, we want to see you on screen. Rasul, are you there?
No, I think we lost him.
No, he was there. Rasul, are you there? Because I want to tell Rasul, he wowed us. Rasul, good. Rasul, did you hear what Sharad said? You wowed us so much, you blew us off our feet. You wowed us so much, you blew us off our feet. And we found another guy who is now wowing us more. I mean, this ecstasy of understanding technology and tradition is unbearable. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I very much appreciated your talk.
Rasul, have you met Sharad? Have you met Sharad?
No, we've never met before.
No,
obviously,
we never met, but I think
you must meet him.
I think our work crossed the path.
Yeah, and I think both of you should work together somewhere because, you know, both of you are so fantastic in technology and you are the cutting edge and he's in animation and you are in sound. I think it's unbelievable.
Absolutely. A lot of
I mean, I totally believe that anything that you create within the computer, computer graphics as animation or CGI or anything, that doesn't come across to you as natural unless you do the sound properly. And it is the sound that makes you feel that it looks real, you know.
No, sound plays such a huge element in.
Yeah, I mean, every of our perception of a visual is actually related to sound, which we actually don't know. Because
so we interpret the sound and the visual.
I mean, like I said, you know, we concretize the meaning of what we see. Is being led by the sound. I'll just tell you another example. We as the human race, we were hunters, you know. We always looked forward to see what is coming in. But the attack always came from the back. So if you analyze a human brain, our sense of listening, our power of listening, the back of the brain has the more sense of the power of listening than what is in the front. So when the Japanese scientists, who are involved in designing surround sound format in cinema, we created a lot more importance to the surround sound, what is coming from your back. So the immersive sound technology, like Oro 3D, for example, gave so much importance to the surround, because we as human race, we always heard from behind, what is coming from behind. The attack always came from behind. So it is our survival instinct. The sound always led our survival. I mean, that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Brilliant.
To Sharad.
I think it's incredibly true.
Brilliant, brilliant, Rasul.
Sound
Thanks,
for
Rasul.
healing.
Thanks, Rasul. Okay,
Sound for
Sharad.
healing.
Sharad,
I got to go now. I'm very
Yeah,
sorry
okay.
because I got
Thanks,
to go.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you,
Saying bye to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
Rasul.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Great time. Sharad, the last question before we go to the next speaker. And that question is, Sharad, how is India and Indian audience reacting to what you're doing?
Yeah.
Is it become very popular? Is it going to become mainstream very soon?
Yeah, so we've had, so the future of comics is not on physical anymore. It is about a digital experience, right? So I think there's 3 levels we look at on how do we see if this is, finding that momentum. So in India, we've had over 200 million views of our digital comics and shorts all across the country, right? So I think that shows that our characters, our stories, the way we have transcended this comic book experience to mobile has really found a lot of momentum. The second phase is, can we transform animation? And in that case, we've done over 200 episodes of animation with partners like Amazon. We've done with Disney, with others, and we're doing a big show right now that we're going to be launching later this year as well. Probably the biggest show in the history of animation for the country, which we haven't announced yet, but with one of the biggest partners in the country. So that one, I think, will set a very different bar on trying to transform the nation as well. So I think we look at Marvel in the US and what they did to spark a generation. And we look at people like Hanna-Barbera as well. And so we think that equivalence here can be done in the same way, but it really is sparking a global revolution. That's the key. I think that, for a kid, when they see a Pokemon or a Harry Potter or a Spider-Man, they're taken into that place of wonder, no matter where they are. The quality we have to execute with has to sit on a global stage and has to execute on a global stage for us to be able to kind of open people's eyes up in that way. So I think that's the real challenge we have, to have the right types of budgets, to have the right type of scale. But the testament, I think, is when we unveiled our Mahabharata at the San Diego Comic-Con a number of years ago, which was here in California. It is the biggest pop culture event in the world. 200,000 people show up for it. Every movie, every premiere, everything is there. We unveiled it on stage, and it was voted by Rolling Stone, I think, as the top second thing that came out of the comic convention. And number 1 was, I think, J.J. Abrams unveiling Star Wars footage, right? So the fact that we were able to get onto that level at the global levels is very important for us as well.
Thanks, Sharad. We'll come back to you. Sanjay, I will come to you in the end after 2 more speakers because, you are speaking at the macro level, very conceptual. All right? I hope you don't mind. Now, let me go to Peter Nagy of Nature Montex. Peter, you have to introduce yourself. It'll be very good. And I think you want to speak on influence of technology on fine arts, right? That's what you wrote to me. Right. Peter, please go ahead. Talk about yourself for a minute. Tell us all the wonderful things that you do, and then just talk to us.
Well, I'm originally from New York, where I was a student at art school and I studied communication design and art history. And then in New York, I started a gallery called Nature Morte. It had nothing to do with India. I had never been to India. I came to India. That gallery in New York closed in 1988, and I was busy working as an artist in those days. So I came to India as a tourist in 1990 and came to live here for a year in 92. That year has turned into 28 years. And in 1997, I opened a gallery by the same name, Nature Morte, in New Delhi. So the gallery is now 23 years old, and we represent a number of well-known artists that many may have heard of, such as Subodh Gupta, Dayanita Singh, Anita Dubey, many people. So, it's all on the website, as most things are. So involved in all levels of the Indian fine art world for now about 30 years. And to come around to our topic today, how is technology really, I'm a fine art guy, so I'm only talking about the fine art world and how technology has impacted that. And really, certainly the internet has impacted all businesses and the way all businesses function. And it's primarily, it's been a fantastic tool to help artists in India learn about art all over the world, and vice versa, of course. All art spaces, be them museums or galleries all over the world, put a lot of emphasis onto their digital platforms and their websites. So this has been a great boon, especially to the artists of India, because it used to be, very hard to find out about art all over the world. And they simply didn't have access to the information. Art, even today, there's very little information about fine art in mainstream media, right? So this has been a fantastic help in the last, say, 20 years for Indian artists to learn about art developments and art spaces all over the world. But as Mr. Prakuti said, that information is not knowledge, also information is not experience, right? So this media, this is information about art, but it's not really about experiencing art. You can look at pictures of paintings on the internet or on your cell phone, but that you're still only learning maybe half of the story, right? I mean, art, especially paintings or sculpture especially, I mean, you have to experience the works in real life to get the 100% experience of what everything that's going on. So even with the rise of technology and information communication technology, it's actually made the space in which we put real artworks into, say the museum and the gallery, more important, because there's no replacement for that. You've seen in the last 20 years the rise of the art fair as a model all over the world. But the art fair is about bringing the actual objects to people in other cities. It's still saying that there's no replacement for experiencing the actual art object, be it a painting or a sculpture. The art forms that work very well on our cell phones is a photograph or a short video, right? So those work very, very well. And it's interesting because we're actually seeing those perhaps move out of the art space more and more because they do function so well simply on the phone. Consequently, what we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years in the fine art world is a move away from art dealing with technology or using technology. The human brain will always strive for a balance of experiences, I think. So as more and more of our life is mediated through technology, we barely even have the experience of opening a paper newspaper anymore, right? And that was a very tactile experience, looking through a big newspaper and the print and all that. We don't even do that anymore. So what we've seen more and more move into the fine art world is the antithesis of the technological spirit. More things that are made by hand, what artists are choosing to make, and then what curators and galleries and museums are choosing to focus on, and then what collectors choose to buy, are things that are more handmade, are more about the physical experience of materials that can't be replicated through technology. So especially now in the world of sculpture, especially, we're seeing much more emphasis on media that was so-called crafts earlier, say ceramics, textiles, handmade carved wood, things like that. All sectors of the art world are moving towards that because they're craving that type of experience. As technology takes over more and more of that side of our lives, people are wanting from art the other side of experience. That's what artists want to make, but that's what I was saying. And so I think it's a healthy balance. Of course, the tech is there to help us with, getting the pictures out there and moving things around. But we've really seen the fine art world turn more towards the handmade, the craft-oriented aspect of things. In terms of India, I think what that means for a future is, India has a phenomenal craft technology, a craft-based craft people all over the world. We're seeing artists, fine artists of India, move more and more into that space and work on collaborations with these artists to revive these handmade forms that are being lost because their audiences were going away. But now artists are engaging with that level of craftsmanship to revive them, almost the way the gentleman was talking about reviving the Mahabharata and these kind of narratives into a more contemporary form of animation and cartoon animation. We're seeing the traditional crafts of India start to be revived in collaboration with fine artists, become more conceptually oriented, but become revived and very, very relevant, I think, for people today.
Peter, are you telling us that the excess of technology and too much of technology is creating a craving in human beings to go back to the skilled work that people did who created with their hands and their minds and in their imagination?
Very much so, and with the hands, I think it's not only in the fine art. Look at the rise of interest just in food and people cooking for themselves and artisanal ingredients. That's also, I think, part of this movement. And the general more interest in fashion and textiles and what people wear. People want to express themselves by putting on garments and playing with those garments. It's a response to technology. I don't want to say it's anti-technology because everybody is doing both, but it does, as I said, the human brain wants balancing. And as we get overstimulated through certain technological digital media, we're going to go and crave that other side of things. And that's been very much the impetus, the movement in the fine arts in the last 10 to 15 years.
Peter, can we also say that the Western model of standardization, of repeat, of creating the same thing again and again so that more and more people have it, as against the Indian tradition of customization, where everything is different, they may look the same, but everything is different. Just like in your music, there's so much of improvisation by the individual. Do you think this kind of customization, individualism, individual creation, so everybody has a share of something which may look the same, may feel the same, but is very different because it resonates with the individual? We think this is going to become bigger and bigger and lead to a revival of all the traditional arts, because it's all very, very different. Nothing is standardized.
Well, yes, I mean, that's always been the impetus behind the fine art world, right? You have one individual making one object, and even if they develop a recognizable style, each object is unique, right? Each thing changes, and you want to see an artist change and grow over time. People are bored. Nobody wants to see an artist continue making the exact same thing. That is the whole point of fine art and the unique object. And I think we are seeing that more and more. I mean, technology has enabled more people to express themselves in more types of ways and get their expressions diversified. So an artist can be now sitting in a small town in India and then be on Instagram and Facebook and get the images of his work all over the world. So I think that's right what you're saying. I mean, more and more things are going to be customized, right? We're seeing more niche marketing. We're seeing smaller groups, smaller tribes of more individualized production, cultural production. Yes. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, you do. I think we understand. But Peter, the last question before I go somewhere. Peter, tell us, with 3D printing, you have infinite possibilities of individual creation. That means you sit down on a machine, you design.
We also have infinite possibilities with hand-carved stone and hand-carved wood, and I mean, it's just another tool but artists have always had infinite possibilities with any material, be it clay or wood or stone or 3D printing. So,
and you think that the artists use it,
but the
artists, you think the artists will dominate the machine and technology in future, and that will continue?
The same situation like with AI, like with these are all they're just tools, right? I mean, like the movies didn't kill live theater, right? And recorded music did not kill live performances. I mean, it actually, if anything, it heightens the experience, right? I mean, Walter Benjamin, who wrote his famous book, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, he was proven wrong. He said that mechanical reproduction will destroy the aura of the original. In his theory, because we all know we have umpteen millions and millions of reproductions of the Mona Lisa, therefore the actual painting, the real painting of the Mona Lisa will be worthless. Well, that's proved completely wrong, right? Millions of people go into the Louvre to see the real thing. And if that real object actually came up for auction, imagine what would the price tag be on it? The same with the Taj Mahal. I mean, if you had to put, the Taj Mahal would have to start at $50 billion, and there'd probably be somebody that would pay $100 billion for the Taj Mahal. So actually, mechanical reproduction has made the unique artwork more valuable. because it creates cult status, it makes it more famous. So technology has actually amplified the value of individual human creation, individual voices. I do think when paintings go for, now a Picasso painting goes for $100 million, what does that say? I think it sends a very positive message of what the world as a society, what human society says, what are the most valuable things that we have? Individual objects created by individuals who were geniuses, who were groundbreakers, who thought things like nobody else thought before. But that happens with technology, right? Technology makes the things possible, makes things famous,
And so, Peter, last question. Do you think the rich Indian traditions and Indian culture, which is based upon diversity, individual creation, handwork, which is based upon creativity, will now flourish because the advancement of technology, because technology can reduce the cost and make it very common, and because it can become very common, available to everybody, people crave for individuality. So the wheel is coming full circle to what we as a culture were used to.
Well, certainly, I think Indian culture in general is becoming more valuable to the rest of the world for a number of reasons, because of its longevity, how it has sustained itself over thousands of years, how it has adapted to different political situations, government ruling classes. Also, if you look at India, India is as big as Europe, right? It may be bigger than Europe. And the differences between Kashmir in the north and Kerala in the south, these are the differences between Finland and Sicily, but the way India has held itself together as, a hybridized unit as a country is a great model for the rest of the world, right? And so I think the Indian culture has many more things, and especially when we talk about Indian food, Indian textiles, things like that, we're seeing it be appreciated more and more across the world. Certainly technology, but again, technology just moves the information around. I think it's the experience which is the knowledge, right?
Okay, the experience is knowledge. That's interesting. Okay, thanks, thanks, Peter. We'll come back to you again. Now, Tushar, we have Tushar Jivarajka. Tushar, will you come online?
Hi.
Tushar, are you there? Yeah. Tushar.
Yes, I'm here.
Now, you wanted to talk about Indian philosophy influence on major Western artists. But we are also talking about culture and technology. So weave in technology and philosophy and Western artists together and talk to us. And explain,
well, yeah,
just
sure.
tell us who you are. Tell us who you
are.
So
sure.
people should know.
Sure, my name is Tushar.
Welcome to
Hi,
Shar.
thanks.
Welcome to Shar. I'm so happy that you're here. I must tell the audience that both Tushar, myself, and Sharad, we're all TED junkies. We keep meeting every year in Vancouver. So it's good that all of you are here on the panel. Yes, Tushar represents some of the finest artists that I admire. James Turrell, Anthony Gormley, and he's and both of them have been influenced by Indian philosophy. So, and Tushar, you would also, I hope you're going to share the Mahabharata experience, the Ramayana experience that you've created. I hope you're going to share that also, so that people get a sense of the work that you do.
Well, I'm not quite ready with that yet, but
you must give us a flavor of that thought at least. Right.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting. And very quickly, I'm in the same field as Mr. Peter Nagy. I am in the art business. I started a gallery about 12 years ago in Mumbai, which represents various artists from around the world, Indian artists as well as international. I kind of look at art as art, not based on a particular nationality. And a lot of the artists that I work with actually tend to use technology in the best possible way. They kind of maximize their use in, so they'll use drones, they'll use incredible super high-end light technology, projections, and those kind of things, and like fog machines or like, AI generated art. And I wanted to like, just add on some of the things that that Peter was talking about. And one of them is the democratization of art because of technology. In the same way that the, music earlier was only something that was experienced by the elite. Only few people could actually like have musicians come and perform for them. And today, anyone has access to music because of technology. And I feel that, in the same way, technology is going to democratize art, where rather than like, one person paying $1 million for a painting, 1 million people will pay $1 to experience a work of art. And I feel that like, while on one hand, I do agree with Peter that there is a proliferation of craft-based arts and a lot of handmade things. There's also a huge trend of art that moves towards extremely technology-oriented, multi-sensory, immersive environments where people can go and experience art not just as looking at one object, but being immersed through all the various senses. And I think that's something that's almost essential today, given the fact that people have extremely short attention spans, especially the younger generation. They are, they have their phones always with them. They're constantly entertained, and just looking at a static object is not so interesting for them. But suddenly, if like you put on a show where 600 drones come and create a pattern, kind of imitating birds in the sky, and like which is synchronized to music, that's something which is mind blowing. So these are some of the things which I feel are the trends in which the art world is moving towards. We are going more and more towards globalized world. So you do see art which, while at the same time it does kind of honor the traditions of where it came from, people are using the same technologies all over the world. And so you are finding art looking like similar kind of artists will be formed in like in China, in Japan, in India, and in the US. So that's a short little bit that I had to add. Thanks.
But Tushar, tell us about our Indic traditions, our Indian philosophy, and how that impacts art, and how do you see that going forward?
Well, Indian art has always been a big influence, especially for major artists around the world. And it's really kind of a little bit sad that, there's like until recently, there's not been much support for those very famous artists who've taken our like philosophy, for example, mindfulness or Advaita, and other various philosophical concepts that like have been around with us for millennia. They've become major artists who are collected by the biggest museums in the world. They're having major shows there, but most of these artists have never had a single show in India. So it's it is a sad thing, but there are some incredible artists. Like so one of the artists that Hari spoke about, James Turrell, he's a 76-year-old artist, and one of his most important influences is the concept of Maya. And what he does is he creates something he calls sky spaces, where he makes you look at the naked sky, and while you're looking at the naked sky, it changes color in front of your eyes. So you see the sky turning blue, pink, purple, and there's nothing between you and the sky, you know, but it's still changing color, and you're like, wow, how does that happen? And that's when you realize that actually the sky is not blue. It is our brain which makes the sky blue. So so there is a mediation between reality and what we perceive. And you know, so the concept of Maya is kind of brought alive with a concept of a James Turrell sky space, which, like, you know, hopefully very soon we will see one in India. But, like, you know, you can go around the world and find these kind of artworks, and you will find, like, you know, in like all over the world, you know, major artists using concepts from Buddhism, from Hinduism. You know, art is now being, like, you know, various other forms, including things like sound, are being incorporated into art installations. And a lot of them are using concepts from Indian philosophy and from Indian traditions. So while we have always had you know, rich content, it's been packaged and marketed extremely brilliantly in the West. Now we need to do the same with our own content. We need to you know, be able to use it in the best possible way. Not just have the content and let someone else get the entire benefit of it.
Tushar, you know, the temple architecture that we see in many of our old temples,
Yes.
the Meenakshi temple, and you know, near Udaipur we have some, in Ranakpur, I think, the Jain temples, in Pali the Jain temples. You see those beautiful you know, ceiling pieces, intricate, done so beautifully, and you see all those images. Do you think we still have the ability to do all that and to recreate it, more than recreate it, create it in a similar way with so much of beauty? You go to Belur Halebit 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, people were doing that in grandeur. But, you know, do you think today, in today's world, there is demand for that? It will come back. We'll be able to recreate that again, keep it alive?
So I think that definitely we are seeing the creation of, like, some incredible temples, temple architecture and all. Especially if you look at the Swaminarayan sect, they've built some fantastic new monuments, which you can say are, you know, I wouldn't quite call them the Taj Mahal, but, like, you know, they're kind of like everyone in the world goes to visit those spaces, and they're made with incredible craftsmanship. You know, they have incredible level of detail and intricacy, like a mind-blowing number of sculptures on the facade, on the ceilings, throughout the temple, and also the use of technology. So, you know, you can go and take a ride in the Akshardham temple in Delhi. You can take, like, a ride, like almost like you know, ride you take in Disney World, but a journey through spiritual India. You know, where they use music, projections, animatronics, etc., to be able to attract the youth. Because I think, like, you know, you, on the one hand, while you have, like, you know, interesting, intricate sculptures and all, today people do need something that's more dynamic in order to appeal to the younger mind.
And my last question to you before I go to Sanjay, you know, do you see new technologies enhancing creativity among our great artists? Do you see that are, you know, doing things faster, are doing things very different? If technology is married with our creative mind, our Indic creative mind, what do you see happening?
Absolutely. So I see that happening, like, you know, quite regularly, where artists are really kind of using the best possible tools that they can find. And as Peter said, technology is nothing but a tool, like a paintbrushes. You know, so I I work with a group of artists in who are from Holland called Studio Drift, and it's actually a studio of like 50 engineers, technologists, craftsmen, and so together with Intel, they created a particular artwork which basically mimics the murmuring of birds, and they used it. I can perhaps play the video for everyone. It will be really quite interesting to have 600 drones in the middle of a festival, in the night in the desert, where 600 drones are actually mimicking birds, like, murmuring in the sky. And it was, to me, one of the most phenomenal experiences that I've had. And it really made me feel that, wow, technology can push boundaries. It's not, it's where, because in today's day and age, like, it's very hard to be wowed by something, because we're constantly bombarded by something or the other. Like, we've like always entertained. We have like, the moment we have a second of free time, like, we're like constantly jumping from like Instagram, Facebook, social media feeds, email, WhatsApp, etc. So how do you really wow someone? And that's where, perhaps I could like share a short clip of this, like a minute long clip.
Go ahead.
That might be quite interesting.
Sanjay, you are next.
Yeah,
I think you got.
I hope you'll give me sufficient time, Mohan.
Sufficient time, of course. You'll have your time. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Because you got a lot to say, and you heard everybody, and I'm sure.
And I have I understand all the issues. I'll talk.
Yeah. Please. You're going to have a lot of time. Don't worry.
How do I share my screen? I'm trying to figure that out.
At the bottom, there's a share screen. The bottom of the panel, where you can see the chat next to the chat.
Next to the chat. Wait, I'm trying to.
Are you on an iPad or?
I'm on an iPad.
Oh, okay. Then it will be on the top right. There'll be 3 dots there on the top right.
Share content. Screen. Yeah. Okay, got it. Share content, screen, and Zoom. Please tell me if it does come on.
Yes.
Do you see my screen now?
No.
See your name. Yes.
Start. Okay, it should start now.
Yeah.
So that was just a short 30-second clip, which.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Sanjay, all yours. We are on time. You take your time and talk to us about soft power in the age of technology. Go ahead, Sanjay.
So I will talk about it. But let me quick. Is it okay to respond to some of the earlier points made?
Yeah. Please.
So, thank you.
Sanjay.
Yes.
Sanjay, this is one of those times where we are on the opposite side. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Kiran. So thank you. So thanks all for that most wonderful exposition of various facets of technology and culture. A few quick points, that I wish to make. Starting with the first, with Rasul Pokuti's, wonderful explanation about how sound essentially makes somebody transcend their immediate surroundings and the impact of technology and everything else. It's really interesting that in the human brain, the sound is actually processed in the frontal lobe. And that is the place where also the visual cortex is. So the visual part is processed in the frontal lobe, as is the auditory part, right? So therefore, there in the brain itself, there are various mechanisms by which people can see color when they hear sound, and those who are physically challenged can hear sound when they see color, okay? So there are very many interesting, let's say, dynamics that occur within the brain when people essentially get stimulated appropriately. And music actually helps people reach that kind of state. And then Sharad brought out an interesting point about consciousness, mind, matter, matter, mind, etc., etc. There is a raging debate now whether consciousness is essentially a biochemical reaction occurring in the brain that creates, a experience. Now, can that be artificially created, right? So that's one of the big debates going on, and it's an interesting idea. And there are, all kinds of scientists, neuroscientists, AI experts around the world who have been talking about this. And, effectively, if you live in a virtual world from the time you're born, in virtual reality, is that Maya? We don't know, right? If everything around us is subjective reality and we do not know anything else outside of it, is that what is Maya, right? So there are multiple facets to this issue, and AI by itself is not just a mathematical computation, that is machine learning. AI by extension is what it learns by itself and anticipates and acts. That is why it is artificial intelligence. So for example, if you look at what Google's DeepMind and all those guys are doing, the chess program learns how to play chess and it beats the other person, not by learning all the previous games, right? And so the world's most complex strategy game called Go was defeated by Google's DeepMind, and the world champion essentially gave up playing that game because he lost to Go. Right? I mean, to DeepMind, and then Elon Musk, Neuralink, etc. So I think the jury is out there. I don't think one can make the claim that things will not sort of get impacted, or they will just be tools, or technology just moves information. Technology does a lot more than that. It does a lot more than just move information. It moves people. For example, if it didn't have an automobile, right, the entire culture of America would not exist if there was no automobile. What we know today as American culture, right? It's the highways, the roadside diners, the lifestyle, everything is a function of the way people move. You take a washing machine, right? The lives of millions of women have changed because of the washing machine. Now that is impacting their culture. So, and the way they behave, the way they interact with society around them, and there are very many examples of how culture actually gets impacted very heavily by technology. It's a symbiotic relationship. It is not that one is sort of subservient to the other, because the rate at which technology has moved is something that we all need to be very aware of. And the fact that, we talk of a Picasso or a Bhimsen Joshi providing some absolutely dazzling, unique, one-of-a-kind experience holds very true only for a Picasso and Bhimsen Joshi. What about the millions of others who are not? What happens to them when technology takes over what they can do, right? We talk about all the craftspeople, and I think Tushar made a wonderful point about the democratization of art. So while you can make $1 million by selling art for $1 a piece, what happens to the artist? Is the artist culture in a loose sense being impacted by that, right? What happens to all the folks in say northeast of India who are doing craft work, who are doing bamboo furniture and so on? How is that impacted by technology, right? So there are very important issues that are socioeconomic and cultural that have ramifications. And we talk about spirituality, the metaphysics and all of that. One of the challenges we have in India is we spend a lot of time on metaphysics and less time on physics, which means the actual act of doing and expending energy. in every field outside of the individual artist, about 20 to 30% only is the conceptualization. 70% is the execution, packaging, marketing, sales, business development, partnerships, deal making, blah, 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 right? And that requires an ecosystem to get built. And it is that ecosystem mindset as opposed to a transaction mindset, or as opposed to just a particular gee whiz cool thing, is what makes the difference, which is a system design aspect as opposed to doing just one thing. You know, we talked about it's like a fast food versus a Michelin star restaurant, right? So when fast food comes, what happens to all the vada pav guys on the road? So these are questions that we need to think about. You know, Walt Whitman, T.S. Eliot, and all these guys were deeply steeped in Vedanta, right? But why aren't we steeped in the Vedanta? And that is again, you know, n number of issues that you know, we need to grapple with, you know, whether it relates to education and all of that, and how do we use technology to make it happen. Now, what has happened, all of these thoughts have come together, and, you know, Kiran and I have talked about it for some time, and therefore we are looking at creating something called NICE, which I'm currently co-leading, called Network of Indian Cultural Enterprises. The objective of this NICE is essentially to be able to harness all that we have talked about and give it the physics. In other words, how do you now create an ecosystem that enables entrepreneurs to actually build brands that are rooted within the Indian ethos that become globally known, right? And that is the key issue. While we have all the wonderful animation and the comic work, etc., how does it become an ecosystem, a thriving ecosystem like in Japan or in Korea or in the US? It doesn't happen because of one person. It happens because when there's a large community of people who believe in making this thing happen. So soft power or brand India is what will get done when all of us come together, and that is the endeavor at NICE, which is creation of this community of people who want to be able to make this impact. And now, you know, prior to this, I was leading the digital diplomacy part at iSpirit, which is a technology think tank, right? Now, technology think tank, India's only industry, which is globally known, recognized, valuable, creates jobs, is the IT business, right? $180 billion, 4 million people. There is no other Indian industry that is globally known and delivers these kinds of numbers. And the fact remains that what we have built in India is something that is a fantastic model for the world to appreciate. And that is what the digital diplomacy part was all about. And then you realize that it is not just a question of building something. It requires an ecosystem to make it actually worthwhile and implemented and successfully recognized around the world. It takes a huge amount of effort, time, money, people, commitment, and all of those things. And those are the kinds of experiences and thoughts that we have to bring to bear, okay? And we need to really understand what does it mean, right, for us to be able to do this. Now, the example that Tushar showed of the murmuration of drones. Now, murmuration is a natural phenomenon of starlings that use it essentially in the sky. And there are multiple theories of why they do it. Now, when using drones, the fact remains that there was an intel that there had to be a platform like Burning Man. There had to be n number of people, a lot of money, and somebody had to design it and the lights and everything else, right? So it coming together of multiple areas of experience, expertise, knowledge, technology, conceptualization, skills, all of that has to come together to make all of this happen. And that requires an ecosystem level of thinking. So my point here is very rather simple, that while India is great at having individual superstars, okay, we as a country, as a people, as a team, we need to come together and build that ecosystem. There is no point in saying we have one Vishwanathan Anand. The question is, why don't we have 500 of them? There is, right? The only place where we can say that the Indian team has come together has been essentially in cricket, right? And that there are multiple reasons for that. I don't want to get into it. So, but in all other endeavors of culture and all of it, why aren't we producing, or mass producing, if I can use that term, you know, large numbers of people who are absolutely at the cutting edge, right? And that is the point I'm trying to make, that this ecosystem approach where technology, innovation, new practices, best practices from around the world, get married with what is the natural intelligence, creativity, heritage, rootedness of the people. And that amalgam, that jugalbandi, is what is going to give rise to something that will be absolutely phenomenal. Because I think of it as more of a jugalbandi type of an effort, right? It's not an either or. It is the coming together of both. We talk of AI, we talk of all the rest of it. It is not AI or this, right? I mean, if a machine can think for itself, and let's fast forward 50 years from now, there could very well be a biochip that is implemented or implanted in our brains. So what we see, what we perceive can very well be exactly like what Tushar talked about the sky, right? Because that is what I'm able to see or rather perceive, and perception is reality. And that is what Maya is. So, there are many dimensions where one can slice this, and one can get sort of dragged onto the metaphysical end of the axis or onto the physical side of the axis, right? So my submission is just this, that we look at all of this and say, okay, great. What is it that we as a country, what is it that we as a team can do? And my submission to my fellow panelists and to everyone else is that here is an opportunity for us to come together, to put our shoulder to the wheel and create an ecosystem that moves all of this talk and this ideas and conceptualization, etc., forward in tangible, real, economically sensible ways, right? And that is the only way you are going to get the soft power actually done. And soft power is strongly correlated to the economic strength of a country. No poor country has soft power. Let's be clear about that as well. So as India moves from a $2.8 trillion economy and starts growing, India's geopolitical status and its economic heft and the massive diaspora that we have, all of those are great assets that need to be leveraged. And that is what we need to be thinking about. And, and for example, today, when you have a Netflix that is streaming films into everybody's home, the fact remains that it is the Netflix streaming that is going on. And why isn't that streaming service created out of India for Indian content? Because it requires the coming together of multiple things. And now is the time, given the demographic shift that is taking place, given the fact that there is abundant talent on the technology as well as on the creative side in India, the marriage, the fusion has to happen. And this is the generation in the next, let's say, a decade and a half or so, where we will see that happen. And it is a fabulous opportunity for us to really make that leap forward. And that is what, I am very passionately making the point that we need to think about it in real, practical, implementable, physical, and I say physical, not as in material, but as from a physics standpoint, that is energy, work, and all the rest of it kind of view. And that is what I would like us all to think about. And that is my submission to all of you. Thank you.
Sanjay, very, very passionate talk to all of us. And you are an ecosystem guy and you understand all this. But tell me, what are the 5 things we need to do to create this kind of a soft power ecosystem in your view, using technology?
Yeah. So, for example, organizing people with a vision, with an aspiration, can be done using technology. In other words, how do I get the message across to people that this is the vision, right? So I can organize people. Number 2, I do not need physical meetings to be able to have events. This particular session is an example of how technology is being used to make things happen. I can broadcast around the world. I can have virtual events. I can have, for example, let's take we talked about Mahabharata and Ramayana a fair bit earlier on, and some of the panelists talked about it. Supposing we've had a virtual reality walkthrough of, let us say, our heritage buildings, right?
The Mahabharata war.
Yeah, right? So all of these are things that can happen. The question is, how will it happen? It's nice to talk about it and write about it and all the rest of it. It will only happen if people are inspired enough to join a cause that is larger than themselves. And that comes from being able to articulate that story, articulate the vision. It is like in 1930 at the Lahore Pact, when a call for Purna Swaraj was made by the politicians in India. They did not know how independence would come, but that was the rallying call from 1930 through to 1947. It took 17 years for independence to happen, right? So you need that rallying call to take place. And it is that imagining of India, of what India can be, what India should be, how can, and that is what I'm saying, that all of us need to be able to participate. So I first talked about the fact that, you know, we need technology to spread the word. We need technology to create those artifacts that are going to be critical. We need to use technology to access capital and markets around the world. We need technology to be able to partner with people and form those relationships that make things happen. All of this is required. Without that, it is not going to happen. And, you know, like as they say, right, no man is an island, and it takes a village to build a child, right? It's not going to happen just because you and I think we want it and we talk about our scriptures and so on. It requires that absolute commitment and the dedication to make it happen, and requires that kind of mindset, the coming together of people, you know, and you know this as well as I, you know, and significantly, you know, better, that what it takes to do all of this, right? And that's the submission one. Well, this is the opportunity. And
thanks, Sanjay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Hari, we got 15 minutes more. We can do two things. We can ask everybody to give an opinion in their field, how technology is going to impact the work and what do they see, let us say by 2030. That'll let us free. Or we can answer Q&A. What do you prefer?
I think we'll go around once more with the panelists now.
Okay. Now, folks, let's start. You know, the question is very simple. Sanjay spoke about the need for soft power and the coming together of a lot of people. And it also means that we have a common vision of what things could be in future and how technology is going to impact that common vision. So each one of you, please to speak about by 2025, 2030, how technology is going to impact what you're doing and how that is going to impact India's soft power. So let me start with, let me start with Sharad Devarajan. Sharad?
Hey, thank you. And thanks to all of you guys. That was some really insightful conversation as well. And I agree. I think the larger question here, and Sanjay's point, I think, for me, is looking at the larger ecosystem is very important, right? Now, I just want to comment on the thoughts you laid out and where we need to go in a 20-30-year plan have to be intertwined. A rising tide lifts all boats. And part of that fundamental challenge we have in India is also how do we encourage risk-taking? How do we encourage a philosophy of taking risk and not looking at scorched earth if something failed? So, there's a Friendster that dies before a Facebook can be born. But I will tell you from my own experience how many times I talk to people who talk about an animation company or a comic company that 20 years ago failed or didn't succeed. That has no bearing on where the market is today or what today is about. And every failure is something to learn forward with. So we have to create a culture also of an expand the pie, not trying to cut up a small pie. How do we build together, build an ecosystem? So partly I do think that we are very far behind on the AI race right now. And we need to leapfrog ahead of where China and India is right now. I'm China and the US is. If you look at the investment, the ecosystem, the growth they're making in those technologies, we as a culture and as a country need to come ahead because we have a different point of worldview of how we will bring AI to the world. One that is very different philosophically than the US or China. And I think that's an important voice that needs to be there as these platforms get figured out. There's no question, though, on a very tactical basis, where we will see the future of entertainment in 20 to 30 years will be virtual beings. We're already seeing that happen right now. We'll see, obviously, VR, AR, whether that is as in-depth as what Neuralink is doing, where that will be in your brain and you will be experiencing this Maya reality there, or if it'll be as simple as a headset, which many people are working on also. All of that will be a mixed reality, where the real, the artificial will all be merged in a seamless way in our digital life and our very existence. So that will inevitably happen. But I think that on the virtual being side, what I'm seeing is a huge amount of people backing up their consciousness, backing up their supposed being into a virtual kind of version of themselves. We're also seeing AI coming in as a layer on that. So imagine interacting with an animated character or some sort of video game or some sort of friend that is not real, but is something that can examine you understand you probably better than any human being ever can. And for 20, 30 years can build a relationship with you, probably even more engaging than humans can. Now, that virtual character can become more in-depth than even human beings can. There's huge ethical implications on this as well. Because what happens when those beings make us feel like we need to be with those beings more than we need to be with any real life human beings, right? So there's a whole bunch of things that we're going to explore. All of that is part of the fun. The next 20, 30 years, the disruptions that we're going to see, the chaos that will be there will also lead to a spontaneous evolution. And that is the next rung of our journey as a human race. So I'm excited about it. I want the floodgates to be open. But to your point on the ecosystem, if I had one note, it is we underestimate how fast these technologies implement and come into our lives. We are way behind on artificial intelligence as an ecosystem, as a culture. We need to leapfrog ahead and get there fast right now. That's my advice to everyone in India.
Thank you, Sharad. Peter?
Well, I'm certainly not denying that these technological leaps and bounds are going to happen. But as I said before, you know, movies didn't make live theater obsolete. So all of these things will exist at the same time. And if I can refer to Mr. Sanjay's comment about building the ecosystem, I think he's also talking about infrastructure, right? Infrastructure, cultural infrastructures that can benefit everyone across for all different types of art forms in India. And I'd just like to say what often surprises me is that there are infrastructures that exist already that everyone seems to have given up on or forgotten about or don't care about, and everybody's jumping into the future all the time. There is an infrastructure run by the government called the Lalit Kala Academy, which was set up for fine art, and there are spaces all over this country which are not being used effectively. They're barely being used at all. Now, will your NICE organization be interested in helping the government reactivate these spaces to make them more active? Because I'll tell you right now, there are 500 excellent artists out there in India. There's generations of artists out there in India that have nowhere to show their work. So why can't your NICE, you have to create more spaces for culture in general. Well, there's spaces that exist already, which are being mismanaged and underused by the government. Now, it seems to me you people are all taxpayers, right? So it's your tax dollars that are funding the Lalit Kala Academy. So why doesn't everybody get off their butts and make the government do a better job for the artists of this country?
Harry, you better come back and do work here. Don't stay in Singapore or wherever you are. Okay, Tushar, go ahead. Good one, Peter. Yeah, Tushar.
Well, this government has been less than culturally sensitive. So I mean, so we have some work to do. But
yeah, Tushar, come on. Tushar, you are next. You are on mute. Unmute yourself. Tushar, we can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm quite excited about this whole ecosystem concept because I really think that there's so much that's out there that we can take from, like, you know, use the technologies of today and marry them with our ancient wisdom to kind of create something that's really world class. Just as an example, like, you know, you have like an app like Talking Tom, like simple talking cat, which is like a virtual pet. Where does the concept of virtual pet come from? It comes from the Indian temples. You you make the idols like go to sleep, you wake them up in the morning, you feed them, you do all of those things. But we've never really used that in a way. Now a Talking Tom app gets sold for $1 billion. You have stories like Game of Thrones or like Star Wars, which have like strong influences from Indian mythology, yet till today I'm yet to see like a world-class kind of representation of our myths. So Sharad, I'm hoping that soon that's going to you're going to have changed that. And there's so many other various technologies that we have, like ancient technologies like astrology or Vastu or Ayurveda, and those have kind of been hidden away. So how do we kind of use technology to get those out to the masses in the best possible way? And that's what I'm kind of excited about, seeing how NICE can make that happen. And I'm sure if there's an ecosystem of people who are enabling it, then there's no reason why by in the next 10 years, you can see a lot of these things becoming global and world class.
Thank you, Shri, and you make a very important point. And the point is, why are we so disconnected with our culture? Now, we have had people capture our society and give us a narrative that the future can only happen if you adopt a certain kind of life, certain kind of view. And if you go back to your heritage and adopt that and use that heritage to bring in technology and leverage that creativity that exists in your culture, that's not the way to go. Because, all that you have and all the culture and everything else is of no use. I think this tendency to push down a very leftish narrative is what is hurt us and get us disconnected. And one of the things in soft power, Sanjay, is that we must, in our young people, have some of these great talks. I mean, Rasul spoke so beautifully about sound and the reality of sound. And then we had Devarajan who spoke about, Sharad who spoke about, how he's bringing the modern form to the creativity and the great stories that exist in our culture. And Peter who spoke so lovingly about all the art forms that are there, and you guys don't know what you got. Why are you going out? And Peter spent 25 years of life here. And you got Kusher, who's talking about technology and Maya, because through technology, Maya can become a reality. Because Maya is perception about a reality, and that can become a reality in a very big way. So I think, Sanjay, your take on all this.
Yeah.
And then I will give some closing remarks and hand over to Hari.
Two quick points, and somewhat lighter sense. I'll be making these 2 points, but they will sort of have the essence of the idea. When Steven Spielberg came to India, he was interviewed by Shekhar Gupta. Shekhar Gupta asked Steven Spielberg, we've got all these wonderful stories about the Mahabharata and everything else. Why don't you make a film on the Mahabharata? Steven Spielberg said, I'm the wrong guy to do this. You guys should be doing this, right? So that there's a lot of messaging in that statement. The second is, and this is a story I heard from my dad, very, very, very many years ago. An Indian chap goes to a dentist with a toothache. The dentist says, don't worry, it's a very minor ailment. I'll give you a local anesthesia and we'll solve the problem. This guy jumps out of the chair and says, local anesthesia? I want a foreign one, right? So that is the mindset, right? So the asymmetry of media power is on display when you ask that question, why don't we know enough about our heritage? The asymmetry of power. That means what we receive is from outside and from a different framework. We are not producing enough of our own. All underbelly of American cities or Europe, we don't. All the TV shows we consume come from outside. So it is the asymmetry of media power, which is of course linked to economic power and a bunch of other issues. And therefore the question here is that why weren't we having these conversations 15 years ago? Because India was in a different place. There's a new generation of confident Indians, and India is in a very different space today. And multiple researchers have pointed that out, whether it's a McKinsey report or the Google Consumer Report. They all show that India is in a very different space today mentally. It's a far more confident demographic, and it is that needs to be harnessed. And I think the timing is right. Nothing happens. There needs to be a season. There needs to be a reason. And I think we've got that inflection point now, and we need to be able to sort of catalyze that and really erupt. So that's the simple point.
Thank you, Sanjay. And I'll take 3-4 minutes to sum it up, and then we will have Vijayalakshmi take us through the Vittala temple walkthrough, and then Hari can close it. We had a it's unbelievable how we spent nearly 2 hours talking about all these things, and we still feel we can go on for another 2-3 hours. But whatever it is, the message to me is very, very clear. We have an enormous number of people who are talented, working with technology, who understand culture, who understand how technology is going to impact culture, and who all feel that technology will make cultural assimilation and distribution much, much easier. It'll also enhance our cultural artifacts and make it available to a lot more people, because technology can democratize culture, like Tusha said. And what we find also is most of the people here are very rooted in our culture. They're very rooted. Peter has come here from a foreign land for a couple of years, and he stays here for 20 years. And now he's telling us, you guys are foolish. You don't know what you got. You're so rich. And I'm seeing it every single day. Why don't you make use of it? And please make use of it. Your taxpayers, the money is being spent wisely. And Tushar is so excited about our old concept, not our old concept, our philosophical concepts of Maya, etc. And Sanjay is telling us, we got to create a coalition. We got to come together, and we got to do that. And then you got Sharad telling us that, hey man, I'm here working for the last 10, 15 years. I'm using all our rich mythology, and I'm going to create a new form that's going to connect the young people to what we are. So they will take pride. And we're the only country, one of the few countries in the world which have got this rich thing, which can be put into a new art form. And then we have Hari and Vijayalakshmi, who keep telling us, hey guys, come, let's talk together. So to me, the messages are very clear. There's an enormous thing happening. Technology will be a force multiplier. Our culture will get stronger, and using technology for our culture will make more people know about it, reach their homes, reach their cell phones, and that we should use to penetrate our lives much better and make our lives much, much richer. Thank you, folks. It's been fascinating. And over to you, Vijayalakshmi. And we're right on time. We are 2 minutes before time.
Thank you so much, Shri Mohandas. And it's really nice that you're ending with a positive message that we will do well. I always remember Swami Vivekananda saying, where he said that it's just a dim link in the chain and we'll be back to our glorious days. So Kotiji, I request you to just play that video. This is a video where they have digitally reconstructed the how the Vittala temple was in Hampi. This was done by a team who studied Hampi for over 8 years, and the entire reconstruction has been done according to scale.
Wow, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, just
Unbelievable.
imagine. I mean, we can still help reconstruct the whole place.
Yeah, I mean, we go to the temple. We only see the gopura and the temple. We see all this lying over the place. We don't understand the enormity of it. In
Yes.
fact, Vijayalakshmi in the Trichur, the big temple complex is very big. I mean, I can't compare the size, and it's got things all around, except it's not populated. Imagine a temple where there were sculptors, there were dancers dancing, there were people running gurukulas, there were people, doing experiments, the people doing, other paintings, etc. And it'll be a very rich cultural mosaic.
Yes, Mohan, I wanted to share a personal experience. I don't know whether you recall about this McKinsey report prepared by NASSCOM. NASSCOM hired McKinsey in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And you remember that meeting in Taj Palace in New Delhi, which you also attended, where McKinsey, there were a series of McKinsey consultants who prepared the report, they made presentations. And Devang Mehta of NASSCOM was very active at that time. And then the report was presented to the ministry at that time. $50 billion was expected in 10 years' time, or whatever that number was.
Yeah, $50 billion.
So it just so happened that I set up an incubator, .com incubator. So I attended that, and I was very impressed with McKinsey's presentation of the entire report. That translated into NICE.
Oh.
NICE is a direct output of my attending that 2000 with NASSCOM. 2017, when CSP was conceptualized, we started CSP 2 years back. And the NICE idea was incubated, and the whole idea was that we should get a Devang Mehta to run NICE. And I'm very happy to inform you that we have a Devang Mehta of Sanjay Anandram, who is now going to take, you just put yourself into the shoe of 2000. And now imagine saying that Indian art and cultural industry, imagine that and saying how we are going to take over the world. This is our next big industry. This is, and exactly like what happened in 2000, the global demands of the millennials in terms of cultural experiences, in terms of craft, in terms of consciousness, in terms of care, all these trends point out to the fact that India is the source for all these experiences around the world. So our time has come. We are going to become a soft superpower. Vijayalakshmi through CSP is going to ensure that, and Sanjay Anandram through NICE is going to ensure that we are going to become an economic powerhouse. And this system is going to happen. This is a reality that's happening. Just put yourself in the shoe that this is the new software industry. Our culture is the new software industry.
So what have you done so far?
Well, this last two, yes, Peter, I know you.
Tell us what you have actually done besides having all these high hopes to take over the world. What have you done that's actually working in India now for its craftspeople and artists?
Yes, we have formulated. Yes, Peter, I'm glad you raised that in such a critical fashion. CSP is, for the first time it has happened. CSP, a center for soft power, and soft power as a means to that the fact that our culture is an economic natural resource that we have been endowed it as a concept, for the first time has been articulated. It's there in the national consciousness now.
Wonderful.
That we have culture as a natural resource that we have to leverage upon.
Tomorrow's program, please.
Yes.
I just want to go. Yeah.
Tomorrow we begin at 6:30. The first session is on Indian jewelry as a craft form. We've called it Kavacha because we don't see it just as an ornament, but also has myriad of other purposes that people have adopted different craft forms in the form of jewelry. The afternoon session is Mantra and Neural Plasticity, which will be conducted by Dr. Shantala Hegde, and Dr. B.N. Gangadhar is the special guest. In the evening, we have a session on weaves and fashion, which covers the diverse tales of Indian textiles and handlooms, and that is followed by a session on Indian literature and languages. In the night, we have a workshop on storytelling. Sharad, if you're still there, that might interest you as well, because it may be related to your work, so you can explore that. Yes, that's the session for tomorrow, and we end the third weekend with it. Namaste.
Thank you, folks. Goodbye. Thanks, Hari.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
talking
you.
to all of you. Thanks, Shande. Thanks, Sharad. Bye-bye.